Hello and welcome to Comedy in a Nutshell, the podcast with me, your host Marty Kano, in which I talk to the people in and around the world of comedy to discuss what comedy means to them. It's been called the last refuge of the nonconformist mind and mankind's greatest blessing. And it's also been called a bit of fun on a Friday night. I'm the comedy nerd who's seen more than 1,600 comedians perform live comedy. If you want to know more about my journey in comedy fandom, then you can visit my website, thecomedynerd.com. If you like to hear from comedians as much as I do, then please like, subscribe, rate, review and share the podcast. Thank you. My guest this episode is about as well known as you can hope to be on the comedy circuit, particularly if you're not a comedian. His reviews have ruffled a fair few feathers along the way, but whether you like him or not, one thing is for certain, that he, like me, has put live comedy at the heart of everything he does. It's founder and editor of chortle.co.uk, Steve Bennett. Well, how did comedy feature for you growing up? Was it a big influence early on?
I mean, it wasn't especially massive, I don't think. It's just, you watch it on TV like everybody else.
Yeah.
But I think the formative thing might be, like, my parents had, like, 10 albums. That's about it. They were not into music, but they had, like ABBA's Greatest Hits and the Carpenters, whatever was big in the 70s.
Yeah.
But they also had a couple of Jasper Carrott records.
Right.
Because we're from Birmingham and my dad went to the same school as Jasper Carrott, a few years different. So he had the albums just because of that.
Yeah.
And so I listened to his stand-up routines over and over again, just on my own. And I think that's how I got into it, by listening to Jasper Carrott stuff.
Yeah.
And then, he sort of had the Edinburgh schedule before Edinburgh, just doing an album every year or two, touring it, putting it on TV, making another album. So, he was quite prolific, and there's quite a lot of stuff of his around.
Yeah. As you sort of progressed, and you were going into journalism, obviously you had the same interests as everybody else, so music and film and comedy clearly featured. But how did it sort of evolve as an influence on you? Did you start going to live gigs, like be that music or comedy? But
yeah, so I started going to live gigs.
Yeah.
As a student, especially comedy, especially. We had a small college, so there was people coming in. We occasionally did like a group of comics would come in and do a stand-up show.
Right.
It was actually Ivor Dembina, who is still around. He used to ring him up and say, send 3 or 4 comics, and he would. Mm-hmm. He would do lots of these sort of student gigs. And also, I went to Oxford, and the Union had a basement comedy club.
Yeah.
And that was so good. And all the people who were around the same sort of time I was are now amazing. It's, Amanda Iannucci, Stuart Lee, Richard Herring, Al Murray, all that sort of cohort of people who made it massive in the 90s. Yeah. So it was a really good thing to go. And that was, I think, every Sunday night or every other Sunday night. So that's when I started going quite a lot to that, because obviously it was really good.
Yeah.
And then I always just, whenever after uni, whenever I used to come down to London for a job interview or something, I'd always go and try and see a radio recording.
Right.
Because obviously student, no money, but so you go and see stuff at the old BBC Radio Paris studios. So quite a lot of Mary Whitehouse experience, which was the best thing I saw there.
Yeah.
Again, very much of that age, and it sort of felt like it was a exciting bit of culture that was for me. So yeah, and as you said, I got into journalism as a job. And for a while I was working on newspapers out in West London.
Yes. That was the Informer group, wasn't it? Yeah.
It was Informer.
My local paper.
Oh, was it? Yeah. Is it still going? Do you still live in West London?
I still do, yeah. I think it's like merged now with 2 or 3 other. It's like the Informer and Chronicle, I think, merged or something like that.
Yeah, we merged. While I was there, we merged with bits of what was the Surrey Herald and bits of the Hammersmith something or other. Yeah. And again, I started going to comedy regularly. Ha Bloody Ha, which was in Ealing. Now it's Headliners in Chiswick. He used to run a new act night every Friday, or seasonally run, a season of new act nights.
Yes.
So I guess, the guy from the local newspaper would come along and be the judge.
Right.
And because I loved it, I'd be the judge almost every week. So again, you get to see a lot. You get to see a lot of comedy just by going to see the same club every week.
Yeah. So you were reviewing even then? I
didn't really review those. I think I might have written who won at the end, but I went really just because I liked it. I don't remember if it was proper judging or whether it was just audience participation or whatever, audience applause. But that's how I went. I used to go to the new act night every almost Fridays.
Right.
Yeah, and I started Chortle because I was in local newspapers and so the internet was becoming a thing.
Yeah.
And so this is a way of sort of publishing your own work. And the newspaper group I was involved in weren't really that interested in doing internet. So I thought, well, maybe I can set up a comedy website. I was into music and films and all that stuff as well, but there was already IMDb, you know, Empire had a good website, NME had a decent website. So you think, well, no one really does a comedy website.
Yeah.
And it was Time Out was the thing you'd get every week and go through the listings and see who was on.
Yeah.
But every comic just had one adjective. Yeah. Which is, you know, was a great joke of the circuit at the time, of what adjective Malcolm Hay, who was the comedy editor at the time, would give you, and people would hate to have experience because it basically meant been around a long time but still not much good, or you have lively for a live wire act or something, you know, and it would be the same actors all the time. But basically, you wouldn't really know what you were getting. You'd go because you trusted the comedy club, and you go, well, there's 6 names here, or 5 names, and I thought, well, you don't go out to a night of music, do you? You go out, you like to know whether it's jazz or rock or whatever. So I thought, well, if you just have a little bit of a description of what each act was like, it would be a bit more of a sort of a useful guide. You know, not that Time Out wasn't useful because it would list absolutely everything that was brilliant, but I thought it'd give you more of the act side of thing rather than the club side of thing.
Yes, I remember getting Time Out quite religiously for a short while.
It's a shame that's not there anymore, though. This thing which you could get, I want to go somewhere, you know, I'm in town on Tuesday night, I don't know what to do. I'll just go and see a band, see what's interesting. Now you have to sort of ferret around a bit more. Obviously, Chorley is a great place to look for comedy listings on your own website, ditto. But it's very, music I find is so odd. There's no real music one place. You have to kind of look to all the ticketing shop places or just know the venues that you want to look for.
Yeah. So you founded Chorley then, you know, there's already sites for like music and film. So you've now got a comedy website that you're setting up. What were your expectations when you founded it?
I was really just learning how to do websites. So I wrote the first one myself, HTML, you know, coded it.
Yeah.
There was no database or anything. There was a listing for what was on a Monday. I'd written in on what was on Monday. So it was just to learn how to do, basic websites and design it and all that sort of thing. So that was it. And I didn't have, you know, didn't have any expectations really along just a side hustle.
Right.
But a few months after I started, there was a .com company. I've forgotten the name of it now. It was called Comedy something or other. So they got like a big chunk of seed capital from the city, like, you know, 150,000 quid or something. So they were going to set up this comedy box, was it called? Anyway, they were going to set up this website for comedy. Yeah. It was basically Chorley was a newsy part of it. That was kind of like what Chorley was doing. Right. And they had grand plans to kind of digitize every bit of comedy ever made. I don't think they really thought the rights through about that yet or anything like that. So they said, well, do you want to come and work for us and do, you know, comedy news and interviews and stuff? And I thought, well, yeah, I'd rather do that than do my current job, right? Because that's my fun, that's my hobby. Yeah. They signed me up. They took me to Edinburgh in 2000. Mm-hmm. So I went there in 2000 and worked with them and reviewed lots of stuff for them. But in September 2000, they went bust. they burnt through all that money at quite a rate. You know, it's one of these places that had a hit place in Shoreditch with a ping pong table in the room and everything like that. Yeah. I think all the money was basically to put up to draw up proposals of what they wanted to be, so they could get millions of pounds worth of funding, which they never got. Right. So it sort of fizzled out. Yeah. And so, if they thought they could make a run of it, maybe I can make a run of it myself. All I need to do is invest my time, because I'm a journalist. I can pick up freelance stuff to pay the bills. Sure. Don't need to be, fingers crossed, don't need to be full time anywhere. So that's what I did. I just sort of, just put in some hours onto it. Yeah. And, it's obviously really happy how it took off. Yes, absolutely. And now, and it's, I guess, 25th year. Yeah, 2000 we started. So most of the year around it is just me and someone who does the tech side. Yeah, I mean, Edinburgh, there's more people. But most of the year it's mostly just me. Right. Okay. I mean, when I speak to comedians, most of these podcast episodes are talking directly to comedians, and they all see you obviously as a critic because their most close association with you is when you review their shows. But obviously, it's not. Chorley is not a review website. You are a journalist, and it's got articles and news. I mean, do you recognise that if you're seen a certain way, but you're not just a critic, kind of, if you want to put it that way? Yeah. I mean, yes, I guess it's interesting. That's what I am seen as, and probably what the site is seen as by comics. But the thing that takes most time and is probably the listings, and because it's always needs to be renewed and everything, which isn't the glamorous side of it, but I think it's the most useful side of it in a lot of ways. But yeah, but I mean, I suppose the reviews are the things that are always completely distinctively Shawsell, because very few places review comedy around year round.
Right.
I mean, the broadsheets have their little bits, and but like comedy, the British Comedy Guide doesn't do any reviews, and there's smaller sites that do the odd reviews and things. But so I'm still we're still pumping out 3 or 4 reviews a week, probably outside of Edinburgh, and dozens a day. Sometimes doing a fringe. So that is, I understand why we're seen that way. Yeah.
If we could talk about your reviewing a little bit, I mean, obviously you can't give everyone a good review. How do you maintain a balance over the thousands of people that you review about being consistent? I think
the main thing is we're on the side of the comedy viewer, and hopefully like an impartial one, because people are fans of certain comedians and therefore probably view them more favourably perhaps as an unseen one, which is especially true when it's like someone who's made a name on the internet. It's a whole different thing. So yeah, I mean, that's it. I'm coming to it as a fan of comedy as a genre.
Yes.
You take in the show and go, did I like that or did I not like it? And then the job is to explain why you liked it and why you didn't like it. And also, like, the easiest reviews to write are the 5 stars and the 1 star, because you're passionate about it one way or the other. You go, this is brilliant, I've got to tell people about this is an amazing piece of work. Or you've got to warn the others and go, what the hell were these people thinking? But in reality, and there's quite a lot of, especially the sites that pop up at Edinburgh do that. Everything's a 5 star, or they'll take a profit, they'll be famous and give them a 1 star. Probably not really, is it? It's just like, it's easy, because most stuff is in the middle somewhere. Most stuff is 3 or 3.5 stars, especially anywhere where people are going with having put some work into it. So yeah, I mean, the job is probably writing this sort of, this bit's good, that bit's not so good. Sort of analysing it that way for most of the time, even though you want to write 5 stars all the time, or occasionally 1 star, just because it's fun.
How do you keep yourself interested and not jaded by seeing comedy day? I'm one to talk, by seeing comedy day in, day out. How do you sort of mix it up to keep it interesting for yourself?
Well, I think because there's so many people doing comedy now, and so many people doing it in different ways and doing it in more interesting ways. I go to Edinburgh and see like 130 shows, and at the end I go, I wish I'd seen that one or that one or that one, because I just couldn't get to schedule it. So I think the comedy world now is much different than it was 25 years ago, when it was all people doing 20 minutes in clubs. Now it's people striving to do hours on the whole, and what they put into that. So I think it's so broad. It's like, do you get bored of films or do you get bored of music? You don't really. You get bored of a certain type of comedy, and obviously, but you're always looking for the good thing and the next interesting thing. I think. I think if I went like once a fortnight, you'd probably get bored quicker, because you're just sort of either playing it safe or seeing a line-up show that's, because you're trying to do a deep delve into that's quite a big industry, and you just take a punt on things you don't really know much about as well. You go, give it a go, see what it's like, see what they're doing. I was going to say, it is different from seeing it as a punter, definitely, because you're sort of analysing it, and therefore, I don't laugh a lot. If you looked at my face when I was watching your show, you wouldn't know if I was going to give it a 5 star or 1 star, because you're just fairly implacid, and you're sort of in your head, you're writing the review or thinking of what to say, or thinking, I much remember that bit. So yeah, I'm probably not the best audience member, even given the fact that probably dread fills their comics face when they see me come in the room. But I still love it. I still want to see the good stuff.
Is there particular things that you look out for, or that you hope you don't see, for example?
You can make a list of all the sort of things that are hack and things that sort of thing is when you see something a lot of the times, and it can be quite weird. So like, everyone does this now when they're talking about a real person. They'll say like, I'll call them John, because that's their name. And it's not really a joke even, but it's just a little laugh point. But everybody does it, and you go, I wish you hadn't done that. Also, you understand why they've done it, because it's a laugh, and it's a free laugh, basically, right? There's lots of things like that, and obviously, if your whole set is things like that, I think, yeah, maybe like at the moment, I think there's a lot of crowd work that is just kind of, they're just doing it to try and get something for the internet or something. And it's just filling time.
Yeah. I mean, there's an interesting point there, because if you see a comedian who is essentially a conversationalist, someone who might be putting on Edinburgh, as you say, might be putting on an hour show, but their style of comedy is basically improv. The show that you review is going to be unique because the other 20 shows are all going to be based on the conversation they have that night with different members of the audience. So
yeah. But I think you can see how people, like, I mean, we say like with Ross Noble or something, it'll be a different show every night.
Yeah.
But if you watch him enough, you can see him putting tent poles up for things that he might do or might come back to, or might, you can sort of see the architecture a bit. But it will be a different show every night, and it might have bits of routines in it. I mean, very few people just do straight off the top of their head stuff for the whole hour, I think.
Yeah.
But even if it's an improv show, you can sort of see how they do, how they do the job of improv. It's not my favourite genre, I got to admit, but you can it still means it's still reviewable.
Yes. Is there anything that you've seen that completely surprised you and excited you that was out of the blue?
Oh, that's when I have to look back at all the. I find it's not that hard because I've seen thousands of shows, and you go, "Oh, it must be loads." But I don't know if I can think of any off the top of my head that you go, "This is." I mean, obviously, it's probably someone you've not really heard of, so it's easier if you're a foreigner, probably, right? Because you haven't seen them come up and go, "Oh, there's somebody who's doing well in the States," and then you see them go out.
Yeah.
And also, so much stuff is online now that.
Yes.
Yeah. That's a hard one to answer like that. I mean, there's loads, but I can't actually think of any off the top of my head.
So you mentioned there about things being online.
Yeah.
Obviously, now that you've got Edinburgh, you've got a lot of people who've made a name for themselves on reels and videos and things, and suddenly they're translating that to stand-up. How do you fare with online content? Do you engage with it? Is it easy to sort of see in the same way?
I don't like it half as much as I like stand-up, right? As live stand-up, so I don't engage with it that much. And also, there's so much of it.
Yeah,
it's like I would find it impossible to be on top of it all.
Sure.
So I kind of don't. I don't. I mean, I don't subscribe to any podcasts, but I might dip in and listen to something.
Yeah.
I don't really use Instagram. I use YouTube to find people I want to find out rather than following people. So I don't really engage with it like that because it feels like it's a different thing than live comedy.
Yeah.
And as you say, people make that transition and they find that out quite hard. Some do it pretty well. Some really struggle.
Yeah.
So yeah, to me, it seems like a bit of a bad imitation of the comedy I'm going to see 3 nights a week.
Yeah.
if I wasn't going out to comedy, or was getting into comedy, that's probably won't be my way in because you don't have comedy albums so much anymore.
Yeah.
You'd be getting into it that way, but I've got going to live comedy, and that's the thing I like doing. So I feel like this isn't the same thing at all.
Yeah.
I was going to say I can't have stuff like that on while I'm working. So if I'm at home working, I can't have podcasts and stuff on the background because I can't concentrate.
Yeah. It's interesting that point you made there about listening to albums, because a couple of American and Canadian people I've spoken to say they have that. They build up to their recording, which obviously now will be an album on Spotify or some such. But then they're surprised because in the UK that has almost faded away completely. Yeah,
I mean, I know, like, £800 Gorilla and Go Faster Stripes have put up quite a lot of stuff, and I don't. Yeah, again, you're overwhelmed with possible specials. Netflix is full of them, or whoever you subscribe to is full of them, and you can get loads are online for free, and loads are online for a few quid. And it's both great and baffling.
Yeah, we're not really a merch-oriented.
No, but obviously DVDs used to be the big, huge driver of people's revenue. Yeah. But I think that's different because that's more about gifting. That's like I know my dad likes Peter Kay, Strike My Guitar, Strike Mickey Flanagan, whatever. I'll buy him a DVD, easy present, rather than buying it for yourself.
Right. Yeah.
But you're right. I mean, I think albums were such an important thing when I was growing, because you listen to the same one over and over and over and over again and start to know the rhythms of it and know the things and be able to repeat it word by word. Now everything you listen to once and it's gone, right?
Yeah. No, I had my Derek and Clive records and my Monty Python albums, and you absorb
Yeah,
them
yeah.
repeatedly because they're just timeless.
I had some weird ones. I had like it was a compilation of old BBC comedy things. So it had like Round the Horn, like just one track of Round the Horn and one of the Navy Lark or whatever else it was. But I think that's quite good because you get a load of stuff and suddenly these tracks back to front.
Yeah.
For things you don't really know. Still got them somewhere. Maybe I'll listen to that this afternoon.
Additionally, online, obviously, we went through the lockdown period. So when you're unable to go out and see live comedy, and now your live comedy is limited to a small screen, and you don't have the energy in the room, you don't have the audience factor. Again, it must have been particularly difficult for you that period in terms of, as for me, I was just watching and enjoying, but obviously you're trying to write as well.
Yeah, it's again, it's a different thing from stand-up, and it's very hard. It was very hard to review any of that sort of stuff. Because of the lack of thing, but it was a different function. It was, you go to a stand-up show, you just go out and want to be entertained, and you're buying into that thing. Those ones during lockdown were much more about community and building up friendships and relationships, which a lot of the sort of TikTok-y type comics are now about. Not so much about community, but about building direct relationships.
Yeah.
Through being a funny person normally, but it's about doing something funny every day. I mean, TikTok's weird because it's doing the same funny thing every day, but a slight variation on it, isn't it? Yeah. But the lockdown stuff, it was the stuff that, let's say, that the Marcus Briggs stuff and Rachel Parrish were doing. It was all about building like a community of people watching every week and just feel like you're part of this big gang. And everyone was, Mark Watson was doing that. Everyone was kind of, people tried to do gigs to start off with, but I think everyone moved towards doing that to being more of a community-minded thing. And I think that was great for what it was. It gave people sort of a social contract, but they haven't continued, right? No, not. I mean, I know people like Next Up, but they'll film a gig and put that out.
Yeah.
But no one's really doing that sort of community-led stuff anymore because people don't really want that. But they'll take when there's nothing else and you have no social contact. That was brilliant.
Yeah.
But it wasn't so much comedy, but it was. Yeah. It was good for what it was, but it was hard to write about and be not what we want to be doing. Yeah. I think as people we want to go and watch things in the room.
Yes,
if we can. Not everyone can get out, but I think that's what people want to do if they can.
Yeah, and that's a thing that's come up because when I talk about the lockdown period, so yes, it's not the same, but now I've got the opportunity to see comedy that I otherwise wouldn't be able to see. And in fairness, a lot of people who wouldn't be able to get out of the house for any other number of other reasons can now have access to this.
Yeah. So I mean, I think things like Next Up are brilliant because they'll show you a gig.
Yeah.
Without having to be there. But there's no one doing that community sort of more like the big chat room type thing anymore.
Yeah.
I'm guessing some people really do miss that who can't get out to gigs at all and that, but
You've mentioned Edinburgh, and again, talking about comedians you might otherwise not get to see. Obviously, Edinburgh is this melting pot of all these international acts. So how do you find cultural approaches to comedy? Have you found differences between seeing comedians from North America, Australia, New Zealand, Europe, and their acts compared to English or British acts?
A bit. I mean, Australia is very much a festival-driven circuit as well.
Yes.
So they tend to be on the same wavelength as we are because every Australian city has its festival that lasts maybe 3 weeks. So people go from Adelaide to Melbourne. Sydney's a bit of a different kettle of fish, but they'll go around Perth as well and New Zealand. So the hour-long show is much part of their culture. Americans, it's more like a subculture of that people do it, and I think people do it more now than they used to. But obviously, even with their Netflix specials, a lot of people just do an hour of gags.
Sure, yeah.
Or just chatting with no real sort of idea of a theme, which is, if you can do it, it's great. It's kind of hard to do that one because you haven't got the sort of the structure or the payoffs or the things.
Yeah.
I think a lot of them struggle to do the hour because I think they're more used to doing like 45 minutes with an opener. But I think it's just the growth of there's so many specials now to stand out. You kind of see what people are doing differently. So you're not quite necessarily just doing straight jokes. Although a lot of Americans are still doing straight, doesn't mean anything jokes.
Yeah. What about your Edinburgh Festival experience as a whole? So when you're not reviewing, are you able to watch comedians from a non-reviewing perspective just for your own entertainment? What about the industry side, the social
No,
aspects?
I mean Edinburgh's so full on. I mean,
Yeah.
it is. I mean, I'm at my desk at 9, and normally at my desk at 3 a.m. as well. So it's just a month of 18-hour days. So it's watching anything for fun or for once in a while I might go to the bar for a couple of hours at night, but it's just a massive machine because I'll review 5 shows a day. I also commission all the other ones, and I mean, they don't edit them greatly, but you cast my eye over them and process them to put them on the site. You still have to keep the news side of it going. So there's a lot of stuff to be done at Edinburgh. Yeah, I'm not really seeing stuff for fun.
Yeah.
I used to always sort of pick something to go, just one show of the whole month that probably wasn't even comedy or anything, and go and see it for fun. But
Yeah.
I just feel I can't even do that anymore.
Is it difficult? Do you find that a lot of the joy in it has sort of faded away because you are now looking at it constantly analytically and with a mind to writing about it?
Yeah, it's different because it is definitely work and it's full on all the time, but it's the work I like doing.
Yeah.
It was strange, that one that was straight after the pandemic when it was like super, Edinburgh Light.
Yes.
And that was kind of fun again because it wasn't so fully intense. You could actually just hang out with friends or something and in between the day. You still work hard, but not just so madly intensely hard. Obviously, that's a completely unfeasible way of doing it, having a tenth of the number of shows in rooms and the trails. So yeah, it's not fun, but also it's better than if it was horrible, you couldn't do it. You couldn't put yourself through those things. It's become like, this is the routine. What I have to do now to get everything done, I have to make sure that this is how my day kind of works. And I say, occasionally think, oh, I'm doing okay, and I'll risk going out for the evening. See, I say going out for the evening. I mean, like at midnight, I go into the bar for a couple of hours, I come home again, and suddenly, oh shit, I'm behind, and I can't catch up again.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just strange. Why do you do it? It'd be much more fun just to go and see some shows and hang out, but also, it's nice to be part of it. It's nice. It's not people. I think not everyone, but some people, not everyone, like to be reviewed and like to have that sort of feedback. And also, it's nice to be listened to, right? It's nice that people think that you have to say is worth hearing.
Yeah. Well, that's the problem, isn't it? Because if someone gets 4 or 5 stars, then it's fantastic. But if they get anything less, it's like, well, what does he mean? What's he looking at? I don't understand. Yeah. Do you get pushback?
Yeah, I mean, I got quite a lot at the start because I think people knew what short was, and it would be like you'd be reviewing like a circuit act who never got reviewed, and then you go, well, I make people laugh every night of the week, and you go, yeah, but you're doing it with some kind of hacky stuff. But I think now, I mean, especially anyway, the whole ecosystem and touring, the whole ecosystem is you're going to get reviewed. We want to try and you're trying to make your own name for your own show, so getting reviewed is part of that. Obviously, people want to get good reviews, and but yeah, people generally, I think, roughly accept where I'm coming from. I'm not sure enough people with bad reviews just give each other a wide berth, I guess.
Yeah. But like you said, I mean, the reviews are for the punters. They're not for the acts. They're just to give people reading the reviews a sort of a nudge in one direction or another.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, also you tend to find that, again, anybody has a lot of reviews, not all brilliant, but and you tend to find a consensus of the people who know what they're talking about. Roughly is that right? So you go, well, generally this is people giving this a 3.5 star review. That's probably a 3.5 star show. But also you can see a whole day. You went to Edinburgh and saw 3.5 star shows all the time. You'd have a really nice time.
Yes.
But for an act wanting to put it on their poster, they want the extra half star, so it makes it.
Sure, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, it's one of those things where comedy is subjective, and one reviewer's 5-star might be another reviewer's 3-star.
Yeah, I mean, for us, 4-star is like an active recommendation. Like as you said, like, what do you want to see? These would be the shows you start listing.
Yes.
Whereas I think some people would just say 4 is kind of above average.
Right.
And then you go, well, there's 1,000 shows at Edinburgh for 500 of them are above average. That's quite a broad thing. And sometimes you kind of see people who are writing reviews who haven't really seen much comedy and just going, oh, it's funny, it made me laugh for an hour. And there's no real context of why they were just, having a nice time.
Yeah.
Just, 300 words of I had a nice time.
Yeah.
And that could hopefully, that's it. The baseline is you had a nice time. If you're not having a nice time and laughing quite a lot, that's a terrible show. That's not a good comedy show. That's your baseline is you should be laughing a reasonable amount of time throughout that hour.
Yes.
To be doing your job.
Yeah.
That's which I think, perhaps some comics don't say, well, they laugh for an hour. I do my job. That's kind of that's the definition of your job.
Exactly.
Then it's, do you do that job well in more interesting or creative ways than other people, or do more surprising ways, etc.
Yeah.
Which is what the reviewer's job is, I think.
Yeah. What about, for example, if you were to give out some great reviews and then you see those people who were reviewed for that show, then maybe they win an award for that show. Does that give you a sense of justification in that sense? So like you feel, yes, I pointed that out. I said how great that is, and now everyone else is starting to agree, sort of thing.
Yeah, especially when you see people sort of early on in there. I mean, Edinburgh tends to be people tend to pile on things and say this is good, or you kind of, especially for the main award, who's going to be good anyway.
Yes.
Or, I mean, even this year, kind of you knew Joe Kent Waters was going to have a good show before you got there. So just to say it's a good
we mentioned that a couple of months before, didn't we, when we spoke?
Yeah.
Yeah, Joe Kent Waters' name came.
But also, he won our student award.
Yes.
The one was interrupted by the pandemic. So, that's in some ways, that's even more fun, finding people at the very, very, student award level or seeing a newbie show.
Yes.
I go to the Brighton Fringe quite a lot and see stuff that would probably not get on the radar at Edinburgh because you say, well, I'll just give it a chance. There's not so much competition. It's Brighton, and sometimes a lot of it. There's probably a good reason why you couldn't have seen it in Edinburgh. But again, it's nice to have a good overview of the whole scene, right? You want to see stuff that's brand new. And, oh, that's quite interesting. Yeah. So certainly people are doing new act competitions and things like that, which are sort of. They've been filtered a little bit, so it's not the whole mass of people entering comedy. But if you see enough new act finals and try and do quite a lot of those, you're starting to see people who are, they're new and they're going to be something interesting.
Yeah, exactly. People who listen to this will know that I volunteer on doing the awards panel at Leicester Comedy Festival.
Right.
Just sort of, we can sit back smugly and sort of go, well, we knew. That's so you do get a little bit of, we called that one. We're happy about that. So, I mean, you must have that. You must.
Equally, you completely miss somebody sometimes. You go, I don't know where they came from.
Yeah, but also you might point out some people that slip through others' net as well.
Yeah.
So, how do you feel about awards and the Chortle Awards notwithstanding? Generally speaking, do you see them as an active promotional tool? Do you see them as an opportunity for people to sort of cut their teeth among a peer group? But what is it to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're necessary because there's so many people wanting. If we're talking about new act competitions, more than any comedy awards, maybe there's so many people doing comedy. Yeah, that you kind of need some for people for industry people like me. You want to sort of go, well, these have been pre-screened a little bit, and you've seen the finalists. So I think it's necessary because it needs to be filtered out somehow. Then the people who've got the competition credits behind them have got a little bit of kudos, and they go, well, let's start looking at them now, and no, just start looking at them, and those who didn't maybe come back and try again at something else. But because, for example, the number of people that said on their names, so you think you're funny semi-finalist, and you go, there's actually like 70 of those a year or something, and that's not a credit. But if you're a finalist, well, suddenly you're one of the top 12 people who started that in your year. That's worth looking at. Yeah. I mean, a lot of clubs do it because it's just a way of doing a new act night that's a bit more. It gives us some sort of focus. Yeah. I mean, there's so many new act competitions where the prize is like £100, and you go, well, that's not even paid for the gig, is it? Really? Yeah. But you see why they do it, because it's sort of they get the credit for finding people young, but also if you're seeing a lot of new acts in an evening, if there's a competition element, it makes it a little bit more interesting, doesn't it? Yeah. So it's certainly at that level, I think is really useful because it gives you a bit of a steer on, it's being filtered so you don't have to really, so that you can see. Yeah. It's going to miss people, and there'll be people who are good who don't get through to finals and stuff. But there are so many competitions you'd hope they get through somewhere. If they're good, they'll appeal to someone and they'll get through somewhere. You'll see them. Yeah. It's the same really. Even with the Edinburgh Comedy Awards, it gives the Fringe a focus. I mean, we all know there's so many good things that don't get overlooked. there's always some every year you go, well, I'm not quite sure where they're on the list. I'm not going to name names, but there's always that. There's always, well, that was surely a shoo-in. That should have been on the list, and that, it's very, very unscientific and very. But I see I see the Fringe needs something like that to focus it. And we don't want Dave's joke of the Fringe to be the only thing that people win at the Fringe. Because that's such a poor representation of what goes on, and it's so annoying that it gets all the press. But, no one writes about who wins the Annual Comedy Award anymore. They just get paid for the puns.
Yeah. Well, people like a list. I like a bite-sized list, don't they? Bullet points always.
Yeah, popular. Yeah. It's free content. They get a free page of jokes. People like reading jokes. We're trying to take apart, a Natalie Palamides show and say why that's funny. It's less easy read than going, here's some jokes.
Yeah. Do you have those times where you hear like a rave review, and then when you see them, you think, well, I don't know what the fuss is all about, and perhaps vice versa, where you've not seen people get necessarily the accolade that you might give them?
Yeah, that happens all the time, right? I mean, it's, again, to keep coming back to it because it's the most concentrated version. It's every conversation is what you're seeing, right? So you then go and see what people tend to go and see or recommend, and sometimes you go, I really don't see what they saw in that.
Yeah.
Even judging new act competitions, you rave about somebody and someone goes, oh no, I didn't really get that. Which is, again, this isn't the long jump. It's not who gets the biggest number is the winner. It's very personal. It's very subjective. Yeah, that's sort of the fun of it. You can't get too upset by it. Again, no real investment. It's not my. You do feel sad for the comics who can't quite make it, but yeah. I think generally people will. It's hard to make it anyway as a comic, but I think generally people do spot the good ones if they stick around long enough.
Yeah. Who, in your experience, then, have been some of the people that come up in recent months or in recent years that really we should be looking out for?
I can't do these questions. I find them really hard because I don't hold things in my head like there's, people. So I think
I know it's very cruel of me to be doing it because I get asked these sorts of questions all the time.
I'll have to go away and put a list. I need some build up. I know you said some questions beforehand, so I probably should have looked a bit more carefully. But also, then you have to sort of research and go, who am I going to miss? So, I might have to pass on that one because there are so many, right? There's so many people who are good or who are going to be good, who've got some signs of being good. And actually, I should use this platform to promote some of those and give them a big up. But I can't. I'm going to have to wrap my brains for it.
Does getting to see new comedians and judging these newbies contests, does that excite you because you're seeing someone you've never seen, never heard of, early days, and you get to see that spark that you mentioned?
Yeah, absolutely. That's definitely true. There's a billion of people you don't know. Also, I do like the old, seeing a comedy club lineup, which I don't see very often these days because you're seeing so many solo shows because they're repeatable. You can say, well, this is a good show, this is not a good show. Whereas, a weekend comedy club, I don't go to that much anymore. So going to see the sort of the pick and mix style of a comedy, there's still something good about that, and there's still something, every comic wants to get out of the club circuit so they can be their, promote their own name, but there is something special about just going to a lineup of things. You don't really know what you're going to get. Despite saying earlier, the ethos of Chorlton was saying this is what you're going to get. There is a sort of there is a fun of going, I don't know what I'm going to get. I'm just going to go and trust my local comedy club and see what's on. And so the variety of those sort of nights is a lot of fun as well. Yes.
Well, let's try my earlier question, but from a different perspective. If I ask you, who are your all-time favourite comedians? Who are the names that spring to mind?
Again, that changes like the wind and things like that. Yes. So.
There's the question that I get asked all the time. Who's your favourite comedian? I'm like going, I've seen thousands. I don't know. I can't pick one. They're all different, So it's a bit cruel for me to do that to you as well.
Asking questions you would hate to be asked yourself. Yeah. You know exactly what it's like because you go, well, who's on this week? I go and see who I fancy out of that lot. Yeah. You wouldn't want to see the same person all the time. Yeah. So, yeah. There are people that everybody in comedy always says. There's people like sort of Stuart Lee and Daniel Kitson who you'll always go and see their show because there's going to be something interesting. And But also, I think there's a lot of people who would do much. A lot of their stuff might not be considered accessible, even though it probably is more than you think. But there's people like Greg Davis or Rod Gilbert, someone who's doing really accessible stuff, but really doing it with big personality and really creative ways of doing it as well.
Yeah.
All the time, I still obviously got a soft spot for Just for Carrot's old stuff because that's what I came up with. And there's the Billy Collins and the Victoria Woods and the site people, everyone always listens for good reason. Peter Cook, big fan of Tony Hancock for old time stuff. I mean, it's easy to take old time stuff because I'm not going to upset anybody new. But yeah, it's so hard to say who the best is.
Yeah.
And if people ask me in real life, you sort of try and work out what their limits are, right? And try and push them a little bit.
Yeah.
If they go to his Peter Kay, you want to try and push them to I don't know, Justin Morehouse or something, rather than going straight into Stuart Lee. Yeah. Because that's going to be too much of a shock to them.
Yeah.
Obviously, John Kearns in recent years is really, really good.
Yeah.
I think we know who they are. It's also, of course, if you saw the sort of intense, clever comedy every night of the week, you just go mad. You'd want some, some nice observational stuff to break it up.
Yeah.
And,
Well, this is my Edinburgh experience as best as I can. I'll see a music-based act. I'll see a sketch group. I'll see a stand-up. I'll see something absurdist or alternative. And that way, I'm seeing comedy all day, but I'm not having people trying to give me the same message minute to minute, hour to hour.
Absolutely. So I mean, it's really nice that the clowns have come to Edinburgh in recent years, right? Yeah. And also quite a variety. When they first started coming in the sort of Doc Brown era, they all kind of were the same, but now they're all doing so many different things that if you put one or two of those in amongst your stand-ups, it makes things much more variety of a night. Yeah.
And you said about the easiest reviews to write are the 5 stars and the 1 stars. Have you had any experience whereby you thought 1 isn't low enough? I can't write a review. I have to just smile and nod and walk away and not put pen to paper.
I think maybe a couple of times. No, I've always written up because you want to warn the others, right? You want to warn people not to see this. Because generally, I mean, even though it's a 5 scale, 1 is really reserved for the awfulness, and more often than not, it's because people haven't put any freaking effort into it. That's the thing. People just sort of come along and try to busk it, or just sort of half-heartedly written the first thing that they can do. Yeah. Maybe it's out of naivety, maybe it's because they haven't seen comedy, but a lot of time it's just, this'll do. Yeah. It's only comedy, it's only mucking about. But you're asking for an hour of people's time, even if it's a free show. You're asking an hour of people's time and 5 or 10 quid afterwards if you're lucky. But I think it's the 1 stars normally come from a lack of respect for the audience. There's fine in not being dictated to entirely by what the crowd says, but you need to have a respect of what you're doing, something that has a purpose to entertain them or provoke some reaction in them. But mostly the 1 stars are, fuck's sake, just what were you thinking? Why have you not tried this before? And put this through.
So if you were to hand out some free advice, again, from years of experience of watching so much live comedy, there must be some lessons learned that you can pass on to a generation of comics come up and saying, this is the things to consider or watch out for, perhaps.
Well, I mean, it almost seems like shit advice. Just go and say, well, you got to find your voice, right? Which is kind of what it is. You've got to find out what it is that makes you funny and makes you distinct from everybody else. Yeah. And I think obviously the only way of doing that is by doing it and doing it a lot. So I think, I guess it's, I think work at it as well. I think, as I said, the things that get the 1-star reviews, people who are not really working at it, they're just sort of chucking something together. It is comedy, it is a laugh, it is funny, but it's such a, it's an intensely competitive industry. It's also got so many options of what you can do artistically. You've got to, it's hard. And don't rush into it, because you've got to try a few things that probably aren't going to work very much. Yeah. So, don't be in a rush to get that first Edinburgh show there unless you really know what you're going to be like. Yeah. It's hard because, because I think you have to be sort of impetuous to get into comedy, and you have to not think if it's going to be a job. If you knew how hard it was going to be, how many hours on the road you were going to have to do for no money, and what a slog it was going to be, nobody would ever get into comedy. So you have to be a bit naive and just go, I'm going to make it straight away. But also, don't necessarily rush it.
Yeah.
And if you are going well, maybe if things are going well, even just take a step back and think, is this the right direction I want to go in? Although you end up doing something, it's the first thing you did that sort of kind of worked, is the thing you become. Easier said than done. I'm very good at giving out advice. Actually having any experience having to do it.
Yeah. So since you've been doing Chortle, then you must have had things that stand out in your mind as being the best and worst experiences that you've had in comedy.
I was just last week reminded of the worst, actually, because it was one of those. It was a double act called Alison Rose, and sadly one of them died, which is why we had the obituary. Right. But they did this show about 12 years ago. It was Jimmy Saville The Musical. And so they didn't write it, they sort of brought in to do it, and they didn't really, so it goes back to what I was saying before, but they didn't really know what to let themselves in for. They just sort of signed up, we'll do this show on top of our own. And then they finally read the thing and thought, this is absolutely bullshit, and like, we can't do this. So they just bust it every night, and it was sort of dreadful and also appalling taste, but not in a good way, appalling taste.
Yeah.
So they got one of the 1-star reviews, and then also they sort of tried to do it anonymously, and in the review I said who they were. I named them because they were in double act, and they sort of, because they sort of, as a reaction to that, they staged a black. They didn't stage black eye. One of them gave the other one a black eye. He punched him in the face to sell this story that now we've been outed in the press. Someone came up and attacked us for doing a Jimmy Savile show. Oh, mate. But they did it to each other, and it's like, oh God, have I triggered something that was mentally unstable here that I shouldn't have done? But I think they sort of knew what they were doing, but that was weird. They even went to the Malcolm Hardy people and said, "This is a cunning stunt, isn't it?" And they go, "No, this is terrible. You can't go around actually physically hurting yourself just to win a silly title." So that was one of the bad ones, because it had repercussions beyond writing what the hell is this person going to do a comedy show for. Best ones, there's loads. I mean, I do a top 10 lists every year, and I've done 2 top decade lists every year. Yeah. So again, there was a Stuart Lee one after he'd been through the mill on Jerry Springer the Opera. Yes. So he spent 2 years of his life doing this musical, and then the Christian right, or basically one guy who sort of formed a one-man protest group, generated so much shit for it that he couldn't really tour it, and it was on, and it sort of fizzled out. But he was so angry, and it was such an angry stand-up show. It was the most blasphemous things he could think of just to get his own back. Yeah. That was a really good. That's the thing that will remain me a long time. Actually, this is more of a general one. It was Tommy Tiernan just doing the Montreal Just for Laughs show. They have a big showcase for TV, and it's in like a massive warehouse of back in this year anyway. It's an awful venue, like a big horrible soulless venue. He just came out and did just 10-15 minutes, but he had everyone sort of so engrossed in it, and so he's so passionate, right, and so on. And then when he left, if you just felt like the whole room emptied of atmosphere. It was just quite amazing to see just one guy. They just did 10 minutes, 15 minutes maybe on the big lineup bill, to have the room so, on his every word. Yeah. Things like that. Yeah. I mean, there's loads and loads of shows. Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. I'll say it here. I've probably said it before, but one of the most interesting moments in comedy that stays with me, it was at 2021 at the Cambridge Comedy Festival, and Arthur Smith was doing his set, and it was absolutely pouring with rain, and everyone was sort of hunched over in raincoats and umbrellas, and he's like, "Everybody get up on the stage under cover." So the whole audience got onto the stage with him, and we just all sang Hallelujah together as a chorus. Yeah. The comedy just stopped, and we just sort of huddled together and had a moment, and it was beautiful, and it sticks with me. It's like, and it didn't even got any comedy in it. It's just Arthur Smith just being nice. Yeah. I mean, the best moment from the Melbourne Comedy Festival this year was they had this sort of show where the comics sing songs from musicals. That's all it is, just like a late night muckabout show. Yeah. And there's a bit of banter around it, but so a couple of comics came out, and and started singing from Les Miserables, sort of the flag waving song.
Yeah.
And every New Zealand comic who was there gradually came onto the stage. And by the end, the stage was full of, 40 comedians. Rose Matfair has got a cracking singing voice, by the way, and then they're swinging this big flag. I mean, it's cheesy, it's theatre, it's beautiful, but it was so freaking good.
Yeah.
And it's never repeated, right? It's things like that.
Yeah.
Again, it's not comedy. Maybe we shouldn't be doing comedy. We should go and just do experiences. But yeah, like Arthur's just walking tours. I've seen comedy shows in cars and things like that. All these sort of unique. Again, Edmund's very good at these things that just would never happen anywhere else. But the fact that comics will just go with something if it's like a good idea. I remember Ross Noble once at Latitude took everyone for a burger, right? Just led 500 people out to the burger van. But that seems to negate the fact like a really well-written show is actually very good as well. You shouldn't all be stunt-based.
Yeah. So is Chortle now where you want it, or do you envisage new and exciting things for Chortle? I mean, how is it evolving? How is it changing?
It's kind of tough because there needs to be more money in it, and there isn't going to be more money in it, and that's kind of the reality of it. Because I would love to be doing lots more interviews and lots more in-depth stuff, but the reality of it is, like I said, it's mostly just me, and there's only so much we can do. So I mean, in the ideal world, we're making a lot more money, so I can have a bigger team and we can do more stuff. But I don't quite know how it's going to happen. But personally, I find it very rewarding. I love doing it. I love saying comedy and love writing about it, whether people like to read what I've written about it or not, especially when it's about them. I don't know. But the fact, it's given me so much opportunity to be part of this comedy world, which I think is a fantastic art form, fantastic place to be.
Yes.
So love that.
So if bizarrely, by some chance, there are some people who aren't familiar with Chortle, what is the website? What is your mission statement? What does Chortle represent?
Website's chortle.co.uk. It's just a news, reviews, listings for the comedy world. When I started up, I guess I want to be like the NME, which is for music, but for comedy. So, we've got a substantial guide to what's going on. There's like 7,000 shows listed most of the time of what's going on. A handful of reviews every week, a handful of news stories every day saying this is what's going on in the comedy world. So I think it's a good place to sort of find out what's happening. Just trying to get more into comedy is a good place to start and find out more. But I can't imagine people who are listening to your podcast and hopefully don't know about Chortle. We're all the nerds together.
Yeah. So then my final question, Steve, how would you sum up comedy in a nutshell?
I mean, comedy is so wide, right? Because basically it is just getting a message across or doing something that gets a laugh. In the way the comedy world is, that's now kind of based on hour-long shows or even 20 minutes sets or whatever. But you have so much freedom to talk about what you want to talk about, how you want to talk about it. It doesn't have to be about anything. It can be, Milton Jones just doing an hour of stupid word plays. So you can approach it how it's okay. It's a blank canvas. There we go. In the quickest way of doing it. It's a blank canvas that you can put onto it whatever you like. As an artist and as a viewer, you just go, I can admire what he's created or she's created out of nothing. They've made me laugh. They've conveyed their worldview, whether that's stupidity or their identity, or whether it's their politics, or whether it's just fucking about a bit for being a clown for an hour, or combinations of all that. So I think it's just the most malleable way of doing art, and also the most entertaining because you've got that laughter as part of it as well. And that opens the doors to be able to do so many things.
Steve, thank you so much. I've had a really good time listening to you. Thank you.
I've enjoyed chatting to you too. Thanks a lot.